The day my family disowned me, my father looked me straight in the eyes and said, "People like you don't belong in this family." I was standing in the middle of my parents' living room, wearing a cheap black jacket and holding a cardboard box filled with the few things I had left in my childhood bedroom. My mother wouldn't even look at me. My older brother, Jason, stood behind my father with a smirk on his face. They had all decided that I was an embarrassment because I was poor. What they didn't know was that 6 years later, I would walk into their company headquarters as the new owner and sit across from the same man who had told me I would never amount to anything. My name is Ethan Carter, and I grew up in a family that believed money was the same thing as success. My father, Richard Carter, owned Carter Supply and Logistics, a successful regional distribution company that had been started by my grandfather. By the time I was 18, the company had warehouses across 3 states, more than 100 employees, and contracts with some of the biggest retailers in the region. My older brother Jason was always treated like the future of the company. My parents paid for his college, bought him a luxury apartment, and gave him a management position the moment he graduated. I was different. I wasn't interested in fancy cars or expensive clothes. I wanted to build something on my own. Unfortunately, building something on my own didn't happen quickly. After high school, I attended a local community college while working nights at a small shipping warehouse. I lived in a tiny apartment with 2 roommates and drove an old Honda that had more warning lights on the dashboard than working features. I wasn't ashamed of it. I was learning. I was working. I was trying to figure out what I wanted my life to become. But to my family, my situation was humiliating. At family dinners, Jason would talk about his new car, his expensive vacations, and his plans for expanding the family business. My parents would listen proudly. Whenever I mentioned my warehouse job, the conversation would suddenly become quiet. My mother would ask if I had found something better yet. My father rarely said anything, but I could see the disappointment in his face. One Thanksgiving, things became even worse. Jason arrived wearing a designer watch that cost more than my yearly salary. He placed his car keys on the table and spent the entire dinner talking about a new client he had brought into the company. Everyone congratulated him. Then my mother looked at me and asked, "Ethan, what are you doing these days?" I told her I was working at a shipping warehouse and taking classes in business analytics. Jason laughed. "Still doing that?" he asked. I looked at him. "Yeah, I actually like the work." He shook his head. "You know, Dad could give you a real job if you stopped wasting your time." My father looked at me and said, "Jason has a point. You can't live like this forever." I didn't understand why my life bothered them so much. I wasn't asking them for money. I wasn't asking for a position at their company. I was simply trying to build my own future. But that night, I realized my family didn't respect hard work unless it came with a large paycheck. A few months later, I discovered something that changed my life. While working at the warehouse, I noticed that small businesses were struggling with shipping costs. Large corporations could negotiate cheap rates with carriers because they shipped thousands of packages every week. Small businesses couldn't. I started researching logistics software and realized there was an opportunity to create a platform that could combine shipments from multiple small businesses and negotiate better rates. The idea was simple. The execution was not. For almost a year, I worked during the day and built my software at night. Sometimes I'd sleep only 4 hours. I wrote code, studied logistics, contacted small business owners, and learned everything I could about shipping networks. My roommates thought I was crazy. But eventually, the platform started working. I called it Root Bridge. At first, we had only 7 small businesses using it. Then we had 30. Then 100. Within 2 years, Root Bridge was helping thousands of small businesses reduce their shipping costs. Investors started calling. I ignored most of them. I didn't want to sell too much of the company too early. Then one afternoon, I received an email from a venture capital firm in California. They wanted to invest $3 million in my company. I thought it was a mistake. It wasn't. That investment allowed us to hire engineers, expand our sales team, and build partnerships with major carriers. Root Bridge grew faster than I could have imagined. But I still didn't tell my family. I didn't want their approval. I didn't want them suddenly treating me differently because I had money. I wanted to know whether they would ever value me for who I was. Then came my grandmother's 75th birthday. Everyone was there. My parents, Jason, his wife, my cousins, and me. I arrived in the same old Honda I'd been driving for years. Jason saw me pull into the driveway and laughed. "Seriously, Ethan, you still have that thing?" I smiled. "Still runs." He shook his head. "Barely." My father walked over. He looked at my clothes, then at my car. "Ethan, we need to talk." I knew immediately that something was wrong. He took me into the garage. Jason followed. My father crossed his arms. "You're almost 30 now." I nodded. "You need to grow up." I stared at him. "What exactly does that mean?" Jason answered before my father could. "It means stop pretending you're building some big future. You're working a warehouse job, living with roommates, and driving a junk car." I laughed because I genuinely couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I don't live with roommates anymore." Jason rolled his eyes. "That doesn't change anything." My father looked at me. "Your mother and I have decided that we need some distance from you." I felt something drop inside my chest. "Distance?" He nodded. "You're embarrassing this family." I stared at him. My own father. The man who was supposed to support me. The man who had taught me how to ride a bicycle. The man I once believed could do no wrong. Then he said the sentence I would remember for the rest of my life. "People like you don't belong in this family." I asked him what he meant. He said, "You're poor, Ethan. You're struggling. You have no ambition. You refuse to take advantage of the opportunities this family gave you. Jason has built something. You haven't." Jason smiled. I looked at my brother. "Congratulations." He shrugged. Then my mother walked into the garage. She was crying, but she didn't defend me. Instead, she handed me a box. My childhood belongings. A few photographs. My high school diploma. An old baseball glove. And a watch my grandfather had given me. She said, "Maybe it's better if you don't come around for a while." I looked at all three of them. Then I picked up the box. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I simply said, "Okay." My father looked surprised. Maybe he expected me to fight. Instead, I walked out. That night, I sat in my apartment and stared at my grandfather's old watch. I remembered something he had told me when I was a child. Never let people convince you that your value depends on what you own. I cried that night. Not because I was poor. Not because my family had rejected me. I cried because I finally understood that the people I had spent my entire life trying to impress didn't actually know me. So I stopped trying. I focused on Root Bridge. And for the next 6 years, I barely spoke to my family. Meanwhile, Root Bridge became something much bigger than I had imagined. We expanded nationwide. We developed our own logistics technology. We partnered with major retailers. Our annual revenue crossed $100 million, then $200 million. And eventually, we became one of the fastest-growing logistics technology companies in the country. I bought a house. I bought a reliable car. I helped my roommates start businesses of their own. I donated money to community colleges. But I never bought anything to impress my family. I had learned something important. Money could buy comfort. It could buy freedom. It could buy opportunities. But it couldn't buy back the years I'd lost. Then, one Monday morning, my chief financial officer walked into my office holding a report. "Ethan, we found something interesting." I looked up. "What?" He placed the report on my desk. Carter Supply and Logistics. My stomach tightened. My family's company. What about them? They're in trouble. I read the report. Their biggest customer had left. Operating costs had increased. Several warehouses were running below capacity. And they had taken on significant debt to finance an expansion that wasn't working. My father was still CEO. Jason was now the company's chief operating officer. The company was worth far less than it had been 6 years earlier. I stared at the numbers. Then my CFO said something I never expected. They're looking for a buyer. I leaned back. For a few seconds, I didn't say anything. Then I asked, how much? He gave me the number. I almost laughed. The company my family had once treated like a crown jewel was now available for a fraction of what it had been worth. But I didn't want revenge. At least, that's what I told myself. I wanted the company because it was strategically valuable. That was what I told my board. That was what I told my lawyers. And maybe part of me believed it. So I made an offer. Carter Supply and Logistics rejected it. They wanted more money. I increased the offer. They rejected that too. Then I made one final offer. It was enough to pay off their debt, cover the shareholders, and give my family a significant amount of money. They accepted. The acquisition was scheduled to close on a Friday. I didn't tell my parents who was buying their company. I wanted the announcement to come from their own boardroom. That Friday morning, I walked into Carter Supply and Logistics headquarters wearing a dark suit. The receptionist looked at me. "Can I help you?" I smiled. "I'm here for the acquisition meeting." She checked the schedule. Then she looked up. "Mr. Carter is waiting upstairs." I nodded. "Thank you." I walked into the conference room. My father was sitting at the head of the table. Jason was beside him. They looked exhausted. My father stood up when I entered. Then he froze. His face changed completely. "Ethan." Jason stared at me. "What are you doing here?" I sat down. My father looked confused. Then angry. "Why are you here?" I placed a folder on the table. "I'm here to finalize the acquisition." Jason laughed. "What acquisition?" I looked at him. "Carter Supply and Logistics." The room went silent. My father stared at me. Then he looked at the documents. Then back at me. "No." I calmly said, "Yes." Jason stood up. "You can't be serious." I slid the acquisition papers toward him. My father picked them up. His hands were shaking. He read the first page. Then the second. Then the third. Finally, he looked at me. "You bought us." I corrected him. "I bought the company." He stared at me. "How?" I smiled slightly. "Root Bridge." Jason's face went pale. He knew the name. Everyone in the logistics industry knew the name. My father slowly sat down. "You own Root Bridge?" "Yes." He looked like someone had punched him. "You're the founder?" "Yes." Jason looked at me. "You lied to us." I almost laughed. "You never asked." My father looked down at the papers. Then he whispered, "How much is your company worth?" I didn't answer. Jason did the math himself. His expression changed. "Hundreds of millions." I looked at him. "More." He sat down. For the first time in my life, my brother didn't have anything to say. My father stared at me. "You've been doing this all these years." "Yes." "And you never told us." I looked him directly in the eyes. "You told me I didn't belong in the family because I was poor." My father closed his eyes. I continued. "You said I had no ambition. You said I was embarrassing you. You gave me a box with my childhood belongings and told me to stay away. My mother's voice suddenly came from the doorway. Ethan. I turned around. She was standing there. She had heard everything. She walked toward me with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. She said, we were wrong. I looked at her. About what? She started crying. About you. I took a breath. You weren't wrong about me being poor. I was poor. She looked confused. I continued. But you were wrong about what that meant. Nobody spoke. I looked at my father. Being poor wasn't the worst thing that happened to me. Being surrounded by people who believed money made them better than everyone else was. My father lowered his head. Then he said something I never expected. Can you forgive us? I stared at him for a long time. 6 years earlier, I would have given anything to hear those words. But now, I didn't need them. I forgive you, I said. My mother started crying harder. But then I added, that doesn't mean things go back to the way they were. My father nodded slowly. I had one more decision to make. I could fire everyone. I could destroy the company. I could make Jason feel exactly how I had felt. But I didn't. Instead, I kept most of the employees. I paid off the company's debt. I invested in new technology. I moved the headquarters into Rootbridge's network. And I offered Jason a position. He looked shocked. What position? Warehouse operations manager. His face turned red. You're serious? Very. You're offering me a warehouse job. I nodded. It's honest work. He stared at me. I knew exactly what he was thinking. He remembered how he had laughed at my warehouse job years earlier. But this time, he couldn't say anything. He accepted. For the first few months, Jason hated every minute of it. But something unexpected happened. He started working. Really working. He learned what the warehouse employees actually did. He started respecting them. He stopped wearing expensive suits to work. He stopped bragging. And slowly, he became a different person. As for my father, I didn't put him back in charge. He became an advisor during the transition, then retired. My mother and I slowly rebuilt a relationship. Not the relationship we had before. Something different. Something more honest. But I never forgot that night. I never forgot the box. I never forgot my father's words. And I never forgot the lesson my grandfather had taught me. Years later, I visited the old family house. My mother had kept my childhood bedroom exactly the same. The baseball glove was still there. The old photographs were still on the shelf. And the watch my grandfather gave me was still ticking. My mother stood in the doorway. She looked at me and said, "Your grandfather would be proud of you." I smiled. "I hope so." She hesitated. Then she asked, "Do you ever wish we hadn't disowned you?" I looked at her. No. She seemed surprised. I explained. If you hadn't pushed me out, I might never have built the life I have now. My family thought being poor meant I had failed. They thought money made them better than me. They thought they were throwing away their weakest son. What they didn't understand was that they were removing the one person who would eventually learn how to build something without them. And years later, I didn't destroy their company. I saved it. I didn't humiliate my father. I gave him the chance to retire with dignity. I didn't destroy my brother. I gave him a chance to learn what real work looked like. Because eventually, I realized something. The best revenge isn't making the people who hurt you suffer. The best revenge is becoming so successful, so independent, and so secure in yourself that their opinion no longer has the power to hurt you. My family once disowned me because I was poor. Years later, I bought their entire business. But the money wasn't the victory. The real victory was standing in that same world that once rejected me and realizing I no longer needed anyone's permission to belong. I had built my own place at the table, and this time, nobody could take it away from me.